Hey guys, welcome to Business Coder. Today we are going to build a time countdown with React hooks with the TypeScript. So the goal of today's video is just to go over the React hook implementations and understand better how they work and how we can manipulate some of the cycles in order to build components with less code. So the general idea of React hooks is just to attach some kind of a callbacks for the component lifecycle in order to make our code way more optimized. So back then we have been building our React components using the basic classes, and nowadays with React hooks we can just basically build a function and return a component inside of it, just manipulating a couple of hooks, which is essentially callbacks for specific life cycle. If you actually don't know what is React hooks, don't worry, we'll just jump in the code right now and we'll try to explain what is the React hooks and how you can use them efficiently. But before then, if you haven't yet checked out our previous videos where we are discussing the time blocker app that we are building and why we started it in the first place, go and check out. And for the context, it is Electron and React based desktop application with system tray implementation, which allows you to block your time and the website activity for a specific set of intervals with the principle called Pomodoro principle for productivity terms. So let's jump to the code and don't forget to subscribe right now. So previously we have implemented our application till the point when we had a system tray app with the basic settings. But right now we actually have also website blacklist settings and actually timer settings that we can tweak later on inside the application. So this is the React app that is going to be used inside the Electron application. If you haven't yet checked out the building process of desktop application, go and see our previous videos, which is pretty much all about that process. And we also have right now this application, which is essentially going to be a system tray menu and a window that is going to be used in order to show when the timer goes off and the essential countdown for the time blocker application. So this component is itself built on top of React, of course, because that's the main framework that we are referring to. And the actual code base looks something like this. So it is the base function component, nothing special actually, but because we have right now the useEffect cycle inside the React hook itself, useEffect itself allows us to attach in any kind of rendering process that happens inside the application. So if you have used previously the class components where you had component did mount, component will mount, and component should mount, this all combined together inside the useEffect. So you can control all of that. But the main requirement for useEffect is that if you don't want to re-render your app or call this useEffect function whenever your app doing something, then you have to provide some kind of callback arguments that is going to be referenced by the useEffect as a dependency. So what does that mean? So when you have inside your component, you are actually writing useEffect, let's say some function. This is actually going to be called whenever component is going to be rendered. So when you have something like this, it is very bad practice. I mean, even you can't do that. React will throw some errors there, but essentially it is super bad practice to, let's say, set a state inside useEffect function which don't have any dependencies. This means that your component actually going to be re-rendered every time it was rendered. So it is going to be an infinite loop. So for that, you actually want to provide this dependency, which means that whenever this value will be changed, useEffect function, callback function will be called. So this allows us to kind of attach specific variables. When they are changed, our function will be called. So that's the main idea of useEffect, but literally it is entire life cycle. It could control the entire life cycle of your component. So basic implementation of our timer is that it is just a simple styling that we have. It's just a span with the text and background and the button itself. We don't need to jump in styling, etc. Let's just look how it is actually implemented. So in terms of properties, we have here the initial value of the timer itself when it is going to start. Let's say by default I put it at 10. It means this will run at 10 seconds itself. Secondly, we are keeping here a state which is play, stop, and based on this state value, it is going to be start a countdown or like clear everything, etc. It is again straightforward properties there. And of course callbacks. When there is time runs, every time when there's a second passed, this function will be called because probably parent components want to track something. And when it calls a callback whenever it completes, that's probably it. So inside the main logic here, we basically like checking whenever our time value which we are keeping inside our state still larger than 0. This means time is not completed yet, and whenever time is completed, we are just stopping the useEffect process and don't want to run this again because time goes to 0 itself. And when we have our time larger than 0, this means we have still some seconds to run. Basically, we are throwing a set time value, which throws up a re-rendering process again with -1, which means that whenever 1 second passed, we will tell our component hook function to re-render component again. And because our time value is going to be changed, this useEffect function will run again because one of the dependencies was the time value itself. So this short code allows us to run our set timeout and not using a set interval instead, because using a set interval is just hard to control memory leaking and pausing and stopping, etc. But here, whenever user throws a pause or a stop, I'm just clearing this timeout and not allowing to re-rendering process happening again. And whenever it's play, then I'm not doing anything, because if it passed already inside this state useEffect, then it is going to be re-rendered when there is a time value available and it's not 0. So that happens because I have all these dependencies, and whenever there is some initial value change or there's a state change from pause to play, this component will be re-rendered and useEffect function will work again. And with that implementation, we have something like this. When I'm clicking start, it goes down, and when it goes back to 0, it just starts up again, because the actual callback function itself defined like that. Here you can see when there is time value less than 5, I'm just hitting stop, which actually resets time itself. Yeah, this one is pretty straightforward, and as you can see, I'm pretty close finalizing the desktop version of the app. We have already the settings screen, we have the actual Node.js website blocking code you can check in a video, and the remaining parts is actually most of the important ones. I'm going to implement the Firebase storage just to keep users information like a computer version, OS version, etc., just to keep some uniqueness there. So that's it, guys, for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and let me know in the comments how you actually implemented the time countdown with the basic React components instead of hooks. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that like button on this video. Hope you guys enjoyed.